Yoda, the wise green master who could lift starships with his mind but couldn't see the darkness right in front of him. The one who preached balance, yet led an order built entirely on denial. We think of him as a hero, but maybe, just maybe, he was the quiet architect of the galaxy's greatest tragedy. From the moment he met Anakin Skywalker, Yoda sensed something was off. That mix of fear and power, compassion and control. It wasn't just dangerous, it was destiny waiting to detonate. And Yoda, for all his foresight, didn't stop it. He let it happen. It's wild to think about. The most powerful Jedi in the galaxy watching a child who would one day become Darth Vader and choosing to train him anyway. It's like the universe handing you a ticking time bomb and you saying, well, let's see what happens if we raise it right. But maybe that's the beauty and the horror of it. Yoda believed in the Force so deeply that he stopped believing in himself. He thought fate would fix what wisdom could not, and that blind faith cost billions of lives. Because when you strip away the mysticism, the prophecies, the legends, what you're left with is a mentor who failed his student, not out of hate, but out of faith. And sometimes that's even worse. In this video, we're breaking down how Yoda foresaw Anakin's fall, why he refused to stop it, and how that one decision doomed not just the Jedi, but the entire galaxy. Yoda wasn't blind. He saw Anakin's darkness the moment the boy stepped into the Jedi temple. Fear, anger, and loss radiated off him like heat from the twin suns of Tatooine. When Anakin stood before the council in the Phantom Menace, Yoda immediately sensed the danger. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate, he warned. But the council still took him in. They thought their ancient wisdom could control the uncontrollable. That arrogance would define their downfall. It's almost funny when you think about it. The greatest Jedi Master in history, supposedly the wisest being in the galaxy, looked straight at the ticking time bomb of the Force and said, yeah, let's train him anyway. Yoda knew Anakin's fear of losing his mother was dangerous, and he saw that attachment was already in play, and yet the Jedi doubled down. It's like watching someone see a storm on the horizon and deciding to build a house out of straw. Even Qui-Gon's defiance should have been a red flag. Yoda and the council dismissed the idea of the chosen one as superstition, but once Qui-Gon died, they adopted it the moment it was convenient. Suddenly Anakin wasn't just a student, he was a prophecy with a deadline. That kind of pressure doesn't build heroes, it breaks them. And Yoda stood by while it happened. By the time of Attack of the Clones, Yoda could feel the growing shadow around Anakin. He literally felt it. He saw how Anakin's emotions flared like wildfire whenever Padme was involved. He witnessed the nightmares, the temper, the obsession with control. And still, his approach was the same old Jedi detachment. Train harder, meditate more, suppress your feelings. It's like trying to fix a cracked dam by pretending the water isn't there. And let's not forget Yoda's role during the Tusken Raider massacre. Even from across the galaxy, he heard Anakin's screams through the Force. He knew what had happened, that a Jedi had slaughtered an entire village in rage. Yet no investigation, no guidance, no intervention. He just let it slide. Maybe he thought it was an important lesson. Or maybe he didn't want to face the truth that their perfect order was failing its most gifted student. When you really break it down, Yoda's inaction feels less like ignorance and more like willful denial. The Jedi Code taught them to avoid fear, but Yoda himself feared change. He feared losing control of the old ways, feared what it meant if Anakin's destiny couldn't be moulded by tradition. So he stood still, and by doing nothing, he set everything in motion. The Jedi loved to preach balance, yet they were completely out of balance themselves. Yoda was so obsessed with keeping the order pure that he ignored the one person who could have saved it. It's like a doctor refusing to treat a patient because the symptoms don't fit his textbook. He could sense the darkness, but he chose the comfort of denial over the discomfort of truth. You can almost imagine Yoda watching the pieces fall apart and convincing himself it was all the will of the Force. The problem is, the Force doesn't pick sides. It reacts. And Yoda mistook reaction for destiny. That mistake cost the Republic everything. The tragedy isn't that Yoda didn't know, it's that he did. He just hoped time or training or meditation would fix what only empathy could. And that's the irony. He preached emotional control, but his lack of compassion doomed them all. Yoda saw the darkness coming. He didn't stop it. He managed it, observed it, philosophized about it. And in the end, it consumed them all. Here's where it gets painful. The Jedi were doomed not because they were wrong about the dark side, but because they misunderstood the light. They taught detachment as strength when it was actually their greatest weakness. And Yoda, the heart of that ideology, enforced it with the rigidity of a dictator hiding behind peace. Think about Anakin's entire life through the Jedi lens. He's taken from his mother at 9 years old, told never to miss her, and trained to suppress love, fear, and grief. That's not enlightenment, that's emotional suffocation. Yoda saw this happening and called it discipline, but really it was denial wrapped in robes and wisdom. When Anakin began to confide in him, his fear of losing Padme, his dreams of death, Yoda's advice was laughably cold. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Great. Tell that to the guy who was enslaved as a child and lost everyone he ever cared about. Yoda wasn't guiding Anakin, he was scolding him for being human. And that's the problem. Yoda mistook suppression for balance. He believed peace could only exist in the absence of emotion, not in its understanding. So, when Anakin's emotions finally exploded, the Jedi were shocked. Like they hadn't been warning him against feeling anything his entire life. It's like putting a lid on a boiling pot and acting surprised when it explodes. Even Mace Windu followed the same flawed playbook. Suspicion, control, bureaucracy. They treated Anakin like a liability instead of a person. Yoda could have intervened, but instead he nodded along from his council chair, trusting the will of the Force, as if that was a leadership strategy. It wasn't wisdom, it was cowardice dressed as faith. The truth is, the Jedi didn't just lose because of Palpatine. They lost because they were fragile. Their system couldn't handle love, grief, or complexity. And Yoda enforced that fragility as if it were sacred law. He thought detachment made them powerful, but all it did was make them blind. Even when the Order started falling apart, Yoda's answer was more meditation, more patience, more waiting for signs. Meanwhile, the Sith were taking action, adapting, and manipulating everything in real time. The Jedi preached balance, but the Sith practiced efficiency. That's not strength. It's stagnation versus evolution. By the time Yoda faced Sidious, it wasn't a duel between light and dark. It was a duel between arrogance and adaptation. Yoda believed he was fighting the dark side itself, but really he was fighting the consequence of his own inaction. And when he failed, he didn't rebuild. He ran. He meditated for 20 years on his failure, instead of fixing it. Maybe that's fitting. Yoda didn't just let Anakin fall. He let the galaxy fall, and then blamed destiny for it. There's something haunting about Yoda's silence in the aftermath. Watching Revenge of the Sith, you can almost feel the weight of realization on his shoulders. He finally understood that the Jedi weren't the victims of fate, they were architects of it. And Anakin's fall wasn't destiny fulfilled, it was destiny abandoned. When Yoda retreats into exile, it's not just to hide from the Empire, it's to face his own failure. His final words to Luke years later: pass on what you have learned. Hit harder when you realize what he really means. He's not telling Luke to repeat the Jedi code. He's telling him not to repeat him. There's a poetic irony in how Yoda spends the rest of his life surrounded by life itself. Dagobah, a swamp full of creation and decay intertwined. It's the balance he preached but never lived. Nature doesn't deny emotion or attachment. It thrives on connection. And there, finally, he starts to see what balance really means. When Luke appears years later, desperate, impatient, reckless, it's like déjà vu. Another Skywalker, same flaws, same fire. But this time Yoda handles it differently. He laughs, he jokes, he teaches through experience rather than lecture. It's redemption through mentorship, a soft correction of an old sin. Yoda couldn't save Anakin, but in a way he saved Luke by not trying to control him. He let Luke fail, and choose. That's what true balance looks like. Not obedience, but understanding. It's bittersweet. knowing he had to lose everything to learn that lesson. The saddest part is how many lives were lost for Yoda's revelation to mean something. Padme, the Jedi younglings, the clones who followed twisted orders. A galaxy burned so that one old Jedi could finally understand what compassion meant. It's tragic, but it's also profoundly human. Because Yoda's flaw wasn't malice, it was faith. Faith that the Force would sort everything out. Faith that destiny was fixed, that intervention was arrogance. But maybe the greatest arrogance was believing destiny didn't need help at all. When you think about it, Yoda didn't just let Anakin fall, he let the galaxy test his philosophy, and it failed spectacularly. His legacy isn't just the rise of Vader, it's the eventual rise of Luke, born from the ashes of that failure. That's what makes Star Wars mythic. It's not about perfection, it's about learning through loss. So yes, Yoda knew. He knew from the very start. But maybe the Force wasn't warning him about Anakin. Maybe it was warning him through Anakin. And by the time he listened, it was already too late.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.